Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and I've got a bit more of an update for Penance Brand and Aaaaand Brand Inquisitor starter, one of the 3 starters that I posted and the one I felt like going with to try and figure out throughout the early game in Harvest League. I've stuck to basically the core setup that I've showed you. Nothing's really changed in that regard too much, and for the first minute or so, or a couple minutes of this video, you'll see Penance Brand with the slight delay because it changes in just a second. But this is Penance Brand, and this is the skill I use for clear. I do have my Wave of Conviction with Aaaaand Brand on single target, and it is still extremely busted, potentially broken or bugged. We still don't quite know, but it certainly feels like something's a bit off, and you'll see the single target in a second as well. But my clear is Penance Brand, and just about everything you see, except for when I'm fighting a boss, is Penance Brand. So what it does is it has this sort of slight delay, goes for a boom after a few seconds, or when it goes for when it expires, or when it changes target, or when you brand recall. So sometimes that boom might take a little bit of time. We've done our best to get some faster casting, some cast speed, and also using the brand frequency increased gem, Swift Brand I think it's called. And it doesn't feel too bad. There's still a delay, it's still kind of sketchy in plenty of cases, and you can see that I've gotten a bit over 4,000 life with Mind Over Matter and Eldritch Battery, so I can take some hits. I've now am running a Taste of Hate as well, so I can take hits to prevent that straight up death. But it's still a little bit clumsy in that regard. I think ideally you can probably just run a good Aaaaand Brand clear skill, like I don't know, Arc or some shit like that, and then still have single target of Wave of Conviction, because as you can see, Wave of Conviction Aaaaand Brand is still doing dirty, dirty things. And that is up to about tier 8 or 9. I haven't gone any further than that just yet, because I've been very slowly chipping away at my Atlas. But up till that point, every Guardian, every boss, every Metamorph, everything has not been an actual fight. It's just been a straight up showcase of one taps. That's Drox, who disappears because he gets one shot so hard. There's still some graphical updates that are having a few issues. That's through his damage reduction phase. This is still a low tier one, though, keep in mind. But yeah, the damage does seem to be ridiculous. And from here on out, we pick up something called Holy Conquest from the cluster jewel for brands. Now, as you may notice, my Penance Brand now starts going off immediately. Not strictly immediately, it's after 0.3 seconds. What the cluster jewel does is every 0.3 seconds, it will make one of your brands bounce to another target if it can. So if there's 2 enemies nearby and you brand one of them, after 0.3 seconds, your Penance Brand will bounce to the next one, and that makes Penance Brand go off on that first target. So what it's doing is basically eliminating that little delay for the explosion, but making your explosions much weaker. And in plenty of cases, that's still good enough, and the clear does feel quite different at that point. You don't really have much of a delay, you do hit a bit weaker, and packs don't explode all at once, but it feels safer and overall pretty much a game changer for this sort of playstyle. It might be worth getting this cluster jewel and notable very early on in just about every brand character's life. People have said it's really nice for their Winter Brand clear playstyle as well, so it's definitely worth looking into. Though the one issue I see with it is it should make your single target worse if there's more than like one enemy nearby, which does happen often enough that you're fighting a boss and there's something else nearby, and the brand will bounce between those 2 targets instead of just strictly hitting the one target that you want with your Wave of Conviction. But that's kind of what it looks like, and I think it's made the character quite a bit nicer to play, as long as you got the damage to be able to have the one sort of bounce, the one explosion, do some good killing. And I do have Hatred, I do have Taste of Hate, so I've got some good cold damage happening so that I can at least freeze, and with that first bounce, typically that freeze is still going to be pretty reliable, so it's working out rather well from here on out. And I think I'll try and commit the character for at least another day to see if I can take it to slightly higher content and put it to the real test. Now on top of that, I have also started messing around with the Harvest League mechanic, which I have not been terribly enthused about up until now. because it's just kind of convoluted and not very fun. As you can see, what I'm doing here, I follow someone else's, which is, you know, a supposedly very efficient layout for getting your tier 1 seeds to tier 2 seeds and then tier 3 seeds, etc. And it's supposed to be better. It does look better than whatever the hell else I was doing, and it makes sense for efficiency's sake, but I'm not sure it's really that necessary. If you're just trying to casually enjoy the game. It's kind of if you're like min-maxing and really trying to maximize the output for your tier 3 seeds and how you're going to use them, and if you're like really speed farming and all that. Because to be honest, I think you're perfectly fine just doing some silly tier 1 mashing every single time you go in, put down all your tier 1 seeds, come back, do some crafting, whatever. Just really acting pretty casual about it. Your chances are just about never get to tier 3 or 4 seeds that way, but it won't really feel as bad as it currently does. Because with this current setup, it just, I don't know, the way it's currently working, this league mechanic isn't quite hitting it with me. You've got a lot of bullshit to set up to begin with. Once you've got that setup done, you kind of just forget about it and then go on to mapping. You have your bases for your tier 1 seeds, you got your bases for your tier 2 seeds, and you don't really have to worry about it. And as someone kind of explained it well in a comment, fact is that to begin with, it's kind of unfun and confusing, and you're kind of overwhelmed by it. Once you've got it all set up and you know what's happening, it's no longer confusing, it's just kind of unfun. You're done with the setup, you know what's going on, you know what tier 2 takes, what tier 3 takes, whatnot, where to put stuff, how to make it work, but you just kind of go in, do it, get somewhat mediocre rewards for most of the time if you're not really looking to craft specific shit, and then that's it. Every few maps you harvest just a few little things. It's kind of tedious to build up some of your juice for these because as you can see here, I've got basically no purple juice, I've got lots of yellow juice and a decent amount of blue juice. So I'm just being throttled by my purple juice at the moment because it's just not dropping in the tier 1 location quite as much throughout the maps I'm currently doing. So there is a good guide for you to follow if you want to start getting into the tier 2, tier 3 seed farming and crafting. And just to really sum it up for you, you just need your tier 1 seeds over here somewhere that are giving you the basic crafts that then if you don't use those crafts, you turn them into juice or fertilizer, and that fertilizer then gets sent up here through a series of goddamn tubes to help fertilize the tier 2 seeds that you're going to plant around here, and those tier 2 seeds need stuff nearby them. They need tier 1s or tier 3s or tier 2s nearby them so that they're getting, like, it just works for them to grow. Because as it'll say, it needs adjacent seeds, and that's why you have to set it up like this. And it needs several different types of fertilizer. So it needs some yellow fertilizer, it needs some purple fertilizer, and that's why it has to be set up all this way. You have to convert your tier 1s typically into some juice, which then juices up your tier 2s, which then can eventually be harvested and used. And that's the system dumbed down, but you have to build this intricate type of bullshit to make it kind of efficient and work to your advantage if you've got the right amount of seeds for it in the end. Typically we don't, so it's not really that worth doing. As I mentioned, you might just want to keep doing what you were doing. Slap in some tier 1 seeds, get some crappy results, occasionally try and make some tier 2s work with your own scuffed setup, and probably not really do anything with the 3s and 4s because it's not for the average individual. As far as our character is concerned though, you can see I'm wearing basically the whole new mystery box setup, so that's what that is. It's the new mystery box, angel, demonic stuff. It took me a very long time to get the chest. Bear in mind, these are just straight up gamble boxes, and it was like 200 boxes to get the second chest I needed after having everything else. So it was not very worth doing, but hey, here's the result. I suffered so that you might not have to. The character itself though, you can see that I have made upgrades just about to all of my gear across the board. Just tried to get life resists a bit of energy shield if I can. So a nice helm like this, bit of life and resist and cast speed, just life resists, life resists, life resists, life resists, life resists, cast speed, bit of crit multi, and then my weapon and shield I went with +1 gems. In my current setup, you can go either +1 physical or +1 lightning, so you can look for both of those types of things, since our skills, Wave of Conviction and Penance Brand, are both lightning and physical skills. It doesn't matter which one you get. So we have +1 physical on here with a bit of cast speed, and then I crafted life. You then have +1 lightning over here with just some other small mods. It's a cast speed base wand, and then we put cast speed and arcane surge on kill on our suffix, because we don't actually get arcane surge anymore once we have Eldritch Battery. So you should be able to notice that I now have Mind Over Matter and Eldritch Battery in my character, which means that whenever I take damage, 30% of it is going towards my energy shield, and my energy shield is now my main source of mana. This allows me to use Herald of Ash, Herald of Purity, and Hatred all at the same time, and not worry about mana at all. So we do need some energy shield for that, and you can't consume mana anymore, so you can't get Arcane Surge, you can't use Inspiration, so it's a bit of a trade-off, and ultimately it's kind of worthwhile. I do still need the % life as mana prefix craft on my chest, and then I'll get something like 1800 energy shield, and that'll start to feel quite a lot tankier. A Taste of Hate, I think, goes a long way to making us a little bit more offensive as well as defensive, though you can also get an Atziri Flask. You can start running a Basalt if you'd really like, instead of a Silver, and then maybe chuck in an Onslaught onto your Orb of Storms, because our Orb of Storms currently is just using for curses, and then a little bit of power charges against bosses, which so far haven't existed, so it's not really a necessary thing. As far as our links are concerned, I've still got Penance Brand to Intensify and Swift Brand, though I've now added Hypothermia. And as far as our Wave of Conviction is concerned, still Conk Effect, Ellie Focus, Energy Leech, and Arcanist Brand, so I swapped out something for Energy Leech. May get rid of Ellie Focus at some point so we can actually shock things for very large amounts with our skill, but so far, so good, no necessary change to be made there. And then we do have Brand Recall. Like I said, the only real reason to use it is to bring your brands over to you, and that lets them reactivate on enemies, but it also pops your Penance Brand. So currently, not really worth doing, since we now just picked up Holy Conquest, and this doesn't really need to reattach and repop, since it just goes on by itself. You just grab a 4 or 5 socket, 5 passive medium brand one, try and roll for Holy Conquest, and then regal something. I happen to get Brand Loyalty, which is, I think, the best thing you can get, then an empty jewel socket, so we'll start branching out to a life node there. That's all there is to say about the current league and the character update. Hope you guys are enjoying it as much as you can anyway. The league mechanic is kind of stale, or not stale, a bit flat for me at the moment, but I've yet to experience too much in the new farm setup that I've just put up. But I'm enjoying my character. I will keep playing it for a bit. Hope you guys are doing the same, enjoying stuff, that is. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.